This is a monumental decision to be made by the public on the 8th of June. If the Conservatives are elected again, we will be losing staff from schools. We will be seeing inequality, even further inequality in the school system. The most disadvantaged and vulnerable children are not getting the education they deserve, or they won't be getting the education they deserve.
Schools all around the country, they're having to make do on an awful lot less, and this is causing redundancies. That means that class sizes are bigger, support staff aren't there. Our schools are pretty much being held together with sticky tape and blue tack at the moment. A Labour government would end the free school programme straight away and start to channel, and also as well the creation of new grammar schools. It would, that money would then be going straight into frontline education. It would mean that we can employ teachers. It would mean that we can train those teachers. We can keep those teachers in front of children. We can keep class sizes down. These things, this is the very core of education that we're talking about here, and the very future of public service in this country depends on a Labour victory on June the 8th. There is no question about it.
I didn't have a particularly easy childhood. I had a parent that was addicted to Class A drugs. I was homeless for over a year and lived in a hostel. And at 14 I left school because I couldn't see that education was the right journey for me, and I didn't think that I had any type of future. But when I was 16 I found out about educational maintenance allowance, and it was that was the catalyst for me changing my life. So now, as I'm here today, I'm the holder of a first-class degree, and that's because of the opportunity that I had to go and access education.
I know that the teachers in my local parish, in the community around, they get very anxious when the school holidays are coming up because they know that the children are going to go hungry. They're giving out free school fruit to the children to take home at the end of the day. I don't know how these children are going to cope if the government takes away the free school meal from the most needy pupils. And then we're seeing so many families in our community who are needing to go to food banks. These are working families. These are also people who may be on benefits and then get benefit sanctions.
This is your chance to make a difference. This is your chance to give a fair future to all the children of Britain. Every child is innocent. They haven't chosen the way they lead their lives. Every child is vulnerable. Every child deserves a chance. Not just the rich, not just the haves, but the have-nots. Every child deserves the right to an education, the right to a free hot meal, the right to a safe house and a safe life.
What's upsetting is that nothing really seems to be changing. We keep ignoring it. A young person right now will never own their own home. The bar just keeps getting raised higher and higher and higher.
It's council homes for the ordinary average person. That's what it needs, and it needs to continue. You also need to be ring-fencing every single council home which is currently around to make sure that that is not stolen in the name of privatisation.
$500,000 homes come on right now, $500,000 homes to the general public, what really need it, what's not going to be wasting a lot of the money on private rent, what can't afford to even feed themselves because they're putting it on bills and everything else. That's going to make a massive difference to this country, and it's going to change the positiveness of everyone in this country right now.
Commuters on the trains in this country are being made to pay through the nose for gross abuse of our public transport system. Private rail companies are driving staff off the stations, closing down ticket offices, and criminally trying to get rid of guards from passenger trains, something which no one wants, something that's opposed by disabled passengers, by anyone who's got family travelling on a train and wants to make sure that they're safe and looked after on their journey. The Labour Party is saying clearly that they're going to renationalise the train companies. That's a step forward because it means that at last we can begin to run our rail system in the interest of the public and to start making it into real public transport.
The more profit you make, the less service you get. So for the shareholders, it's higher profit. For the customer, it's less service, and yet it's the customer that's paying. So therefore, public transport has failed. What we need is an integrated public service.
The Royal Mail has only recently been privatised, but we've seen aggressive culture from management in terms of looking for savings. They're downgrading the services that we're giving. They want to take hours out, they want to make people's working days longer. Their routes for delivery, post people, they want to make them longer. And this will only lead to a worsening service that customers get.
We've seen a massive underinvestment in the NHS. Despite what the Tories say, we're short of about £20 billion in the NHS, and this means patient care is really affected.
The NHS is now over 20% underfunded, and by 2020 the plan is that it would be actually over 30% underfunded. Now, for the first 5 or 6 years of this period, the NHS staff have just kept the show on the road, working harder and harder, in longer hours, greater commitment. The wheels are now beginning to come off because they cannot do it any longer. I feel personally that the NHS is hanging on by the fingertips of its staff.
I've been a doctor in the NHS now for the last 10 years, and I've been very proud to work within the NHS. But over the last 5 or 6 years, I have experienced at first hand the pernicious effects of Conservative policies, okay? I've worked on dangerously understaffed wards on both day shifts and night shifts. I've seen the consequences of delayed ambulance response times. I've heard horror stories from my colleagues in mental health who tell of patients dying at home as a result of the fact that they haven't been able to gain access to urgent mental health beds. And of course, over the last couple of years, myself, my junior doctor colleagues, we tried to raise the alarm about the criminal underfunding of the NHS, and the government has not listened to us. The government instead chose to undermine us. So for me, I think the question that faces all of us in a few weeks on election day is a moral question. Do we choose to perpetuate austerity, which will result in further patient harm, and I've seen that at first hand, or do we vote for a fresh alternative, a Labour Party?
It's starting to crack now. People are starting to get angry now. People are starting to not do the overtime. People are tired. They're becoming sick. We're getting punished if we go off sick. It's just becoming a mess.
We see people in acute stages of distress. Sometimes people are acutely suicidal. Sometimes people are in very risky situations. Sometimes there are no beds across the entire country. And this is happening pretty often now, where a patient may be admitted to somewhere in Scotland because there's no bed in London, for example. We have children in this country in their teenage years, again, who might be very, very unwell and in a terrible mental state, and they are sent halfway across the country, away from their parents, away from their communities, with no one that they know around them, and expected somehow to get better.
Now, underfunding is happening with a purpose. It's Conservative policy. The reason for that policy is that they want the NHS to fail. They want the NHS to be seen to fail, so that then they can use that as a pretext to privatising the NHS. And we're already seeing that happening. For example, over the last few years, we're seeing more and more money being spent on the private sector within the NHS. The amount of taxpayer funds being spent on private healthcare has doubled over the last 5 years.
Virgin Healthcare have now got several contracts, including in the southwest of England and now in Kent, where they are the health provider for children with disability, children in need of safeguarding, adults with learning disability. And for me, that's just a perversity that a private company is delivering care, trying to make money out of children and adults in need.
There's no place for privatisation in the NHS. And for those who say it's not being privatised, it is, and it's being privatised by stealth. Patients may not realise it because what they're seeing at the moment is not necessarily... They will go to their GP, it'll look the same as it did 10 years ago. But that's beginning to change, and there are GPs that are beginning to offer private appointments, and they're beginning to say, You can't see your GP for 3 weeks, you can see us today and we'll charge you £45, we'll charge you £90, we'll charge you £150 for whatever length of appointment. So that's beginning to happen.
Jeremy Corbyn is committed to reversing privatisation within the NHS. This means that we will take back those services from private providers, that they will not go to various different companies. At the moment, the NHS is being fragmented very, very quickly, and it's not the organisation that it once was. So if we can take that back into public control, then that will make a huge difference to actually, whether people ultimately have to pay through insurance schemes, for example.
Jeremy Corbyn, to me, represents something different from the ordinary politicians. He represents somebody who we know to be honest and fair, who's got very deeply grounded values of equality and justice. And he's part also of a movement of people behind him who see that we want to see change.
I just didn't see the point of going to the polling station and voting, and now I can see that there's an actual change you can make by voting. The difference between Jeremy Corbyn's Labour and Theresa May's Tories is huge, and I think it could definitely transform people's lives.
As a young mum with a baby who's 9 months old, I am concerned about the type of future that she is going to have if we continue on the course that we are on. I want her to have opportunities to grasp her education. I want her to work for a decent living wage. I want her to have the opportunity to live in a safe, comfortable house. These are things that I believe only the Labour Party can offer for the future, for the next generation that are growing up in Great Britain.